stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the January 23rd Environmental Advisory Council meeting. Or my volume is here. Let's start off by, I'd like to introduce our newest member, replacing Robin Mann, Matt Holtman. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone.
I'd like to ask Matt if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little blurb about yourself. Tell us, how you came to be on the EAC, and a little about yourself as well. Not just your environmental self. And then whenever you're ready, just hit your button to light up your microphone.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then you're ready to go.
You hear me now? Good. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I want to thank you for welcoming me to this group. I'm really excited to be here. My name's Matt Holtman. I've been a Radnor resident for probably over 10 years now. I lived in Bryn Mawr for a while, and now we live in Wayne. I'm married and have 4 kids, and they're in 3 different Radnor schools right now, and preschool as well. I have a 4-year-old. She's my youngest. My background in environmental issues is not very deep. I'm a sociologist, and I work in medical and health consulting. But I have done a lot of work in international development, and I've kind of developed over the years an acute appreciation of the interplay between health and environment and people's well-being and ability to live rich, full lives. And I'm really interested in learning about what you're working on here, because I think it has a tremendous impact on the community and the quality of life here. In a recent job before my current job, I was working on international development projects for USAID, the Agency for International Development, and I helped to put together surveys on climate change resiliency and food security. And I know how some of those issues kind of are connected to agriculture and community planning and public health and things like that. So although I don't know a great deal about those things, I'm really interested in learning and really excited to be here and be able to participate. So I look forward to learning how I can help the group move forward. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. What do you do now?
I work for a recovery audit contractor. We try to get money back from healthcare providers when bills have been paid incorrectly. I develop statistical models for them to try to identify incorrectly paid bills. So I work in kind of information technology consulting and in informatics. Basically, that's kind of in a nutshell what I'm doing now.
Oh, great. Thanks. Well, it's great to have you. I'll move right into our announcements. I'll have I'm sorry, yeah. Let us do our annual election of officers. Do we have any motions?
Yes, I would move to nominate Josh Hilbert as chair and Sloan Walker as vice chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other motions? We'll take a vote on that. What's that?
Do I get to vote as a liaison?
Well, I'll happily let you raise your hand.
I'll
If it's
vote
voting
anyway.
for me, yes.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes. Thank you. I look forward to serving for another year. I forgot we need to do our review and approval of our last meeting. Our last meeting was on December 3rd. It was our annual November-December meeting. We held it in the downstairs room. Are there any corrections or comments on those minutes? No? So we're going to approve them? Okay. Announcements. I want to tell you just a few things that I saw, and feel free to let me know if you guys have any announcements. The first is I found on the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission website. It is a meeting they had to honor the region's top programs and leaders. This is I believe it's an annual. They go on a retreat. So each year, the DVRPC applauds leaders and programs that have contributed to moving Greater Philadelphia toward a progressive and economically sound future. Recipients this year of this Regional Excellence Award include Chris Christie, of all people. He was the Regional Leader of the Year. I'm not sure exactly the date of this. Oh, this was on December 12th. This was December 12th, 2013. The Regional Transportation Program of the Year was the Pennsauken Transit Center. The Land Use Project of the Year was Paseo Verde in Philadelphia. That's a very interesting project that's near and dear to my heart. The Regional Economic Development Program of the Year was Bucks County Municipal Economic Development Initiative. And the Regional Environmental Program of the Year, Cooper River Park in Camden County, New Jersey. Now, the only reason I really read those off is because I just think it's important to realize that the programs that we're working on here in Radnor, whether it's the EAC or other programs, if you can show that this is it's a forward-thinking type project, maybe you're out on the edge a little bit, you can get recognition from the greater Philadelphia organizations, and so keep in mind if we ever have a project that we think especially maybe should be rewarded with some special recognition, we should submit that information, submit the project information to groups like the DVRPC so we can get some recognition. On the Delaware Valley Green Building Council website, they are suggesting that early bird registration for the 2014 Tri-State Sustainability Symposium will be ending next week on the 31st. It's a fourth year of this event. It's being held at Temple University. It brings together industry, university, and community leaders to share best practices, ask challenging questions, and provide cutting-edge information about sustainability in the tri-state region. They suggest that you can go online and see this year's lineup of 8 different tracks, 3 sessions each, and then you can register online by the 31st to take advantage of this early bird pricing.
And the date of the symposium?
Yeah, it looks like I might have cut that off. I don't have that on here. Sorry, I recommend going to the DVGBC website, and I saw it right in the front page of that website, so I can get more information there. On Radnor's website, they are asking Radnor citizens to take a survey, and it's the Greenways and Open Space Network Plan for Radnor Township. There might be a couple other people here on our board that can fill us in more on this, but I'll just give you the blurb that's on the website, and then I encourage everybody to go on there and take this survey. Radnor Township is developing a Greenways and Open Space Network Plan. The plan will examine opportunities for new pedestrian and bicycle routes throughout the township that will link open space, natural areas, parks, existing trails, schools, residential developments, places of business, regional transportation, other prominent township destinations, and provide links to trails in adjoining municipalities. The plan will develop guidelines that enhance community sustainability and protect the township's natural features. The plan is intended to provide Radnor Township residents with local non-motorized transportation alternatives and recreational opportunities. So, vital to this planning process, they suggest that getting feedback from the community about the use of greenways, open space parks, and other destinations, is vital. And they would appreciate you taking the time to complete the 18-question survey. It should take about 5 or 10 minutes. And there's a link on the Radnor.com website to a, one of those SurveyMonkey surveys. I haven't taken it yet. Has anybody here taken that survey?
I took it,
Yeah?
and it is 18 questions. And it does take about 5 minutes. And none of them are too personal. It's quite
Yeah,
straightforward.
Ann, you helped to develop this, or are you?
The committee worked on it with the consultant, and one of the things I think that we found interesting is that I don't think there was anybody on the committee that's working on these issues that was familiar with all the different parks. There are lots of parks in the township, so just do the survey to find out all the parks you've been missing.
Yeah.
That's my last announcement. Anybody else have any other announcements?
I do have an announcement about the tree tenders training program. I will speak a little bit more about this on the tree planting topic, but the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society puts together training for folks who want to learn about caring for trees and helping plant trees. And they have a 9-hour training program that they put on a few times a year. The next one is this Saturday. The Philadelphia winter class is this Saturday at 8:30 a.m. At the PHS office, 100 North 20th Street, the 5th floor in Philadelphia. You do need to sign up. It's $25. And it's www.pennhort.net. And I'll speak a little bit more about their program, but it looks like a very interesting program for folks who want to help with the topic that we started talking about last time in terms of helping replace some of the lost tree canopy. So the training is in 2 sessions. The first one, as I mentioned, this Saturday, January 25th, from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. The follow-up session, February 1st, also a Saturday at the same time at the same location. There are also training programs offered in April on Thursday, on a series of Thursday evenings, April 10th, 17th, and the 24th in Phoenixville. So those are upcoming tree tender training opportunities, and you learn how to select appropriate trees for different landscapes, where to place the trees in the landscape, a little bit about the maintenance of trees. So hopefully we can get some folks interested in learning about this as an important step toward maybe building out an effort to replace some trees that we're losing.
I think, and what you're talking about, of course, I've heard of and I'm familiar with, and I think it got its start in Philadelphia, kind of to nurture and take care of street trees.
I think that's right. That's right.
And I don't think the focus that you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not so much talking about, unless you have acres of your own ground and you want to supervise your own planting, but this is more for our,
That's right.
our township trees?
That's right. This program it's linked to a program that is sponsored by the Horticultural Society and the state of Pennsylvania to help subsidize the planting of trees, primarily for municipalities. I've spoken with, and we can get into the discussion, I've spoken with a woman in Haverford Township who runs a tree tender group, and she's actually convinced the township, the Haverford Township, to extend that past the municipality focus to include some residential plantings. But that's at the town is helping to or is paying for that. I think they spend a few $1,000s to encourage residents to do it. But the primary focus of the tree tender program, sponsored by the state and by the PHS, is, as you say, is municipal efforts in parks, along streets, schools, and other public spaces. So that's the core. But of course, if you got trained and understood the technicalities of tree planting, placement, and maintenance, it could also benefit residents on their own properties. So I think that's it. We can talk more about the tree planting a little bit later.
Thanks, Sloan. Any other announcements? Okay, we'll move along to our work group reports and discussion. We'll start off with the Radnor Green Team. There hasn't been a Radnor Green Team meeting in quite some time. Melissa Kahn, who is heading up the Green Team, she is trying to reorganize and breathe a little life back into it for the 2014, and hopes to find a date and time that works well for her group as it exists now. to set aside as an annual, as a monthly recurring date and time. So she's working on that right now. So hopefully next month we'll have a green team report.
And maybe for Matt's benefit, we should just give a little recap.
Oh, yeah, sure. The green team was formed as a recommendation of the EAC to the Board of Commissioners as part of our greenhouse gas reduction action plan that we put together over the past couple of years. And it was the #1 recommendation. And the idea of creating a green team was to put together a group of folks who essentially are the decision makers in the township, who have decision-making authority over things that would have greenhouse gas implications, right? And this group was to, we serve, the EAC serves as a liaison, sort of, we rotate in and out. But the idea is that they, they hash out ideas of, how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions related to their everyday decisions that they have to make. So if it's buying a new vehicle, or if it's planting trees or whatever, the idea is that they can pull together the best and the brightest minds and help each other out, move along our initiative. So.
And along those lines, Jim Dolan just mentioned that it sounds like the township has put some LED lights into this building recently, which I think was along the lines of one of our recommendations. Sally, maybe you were on that working group.
Yeah, that's part of the lighting retrofit greenhouse gas action item, and it's one little baby step in what hopefully will be a much bigger, broader bunch of steps having to do with lighting retrofits. I actually have a question that relates maybe to the green team. I just saw today in the packet for this meeting how in the November Board of Commissioners meeting, I think it was the Board of Commissioners meeting minutes, that the library has engaged an architect for a feasibility study for the reconfiguration of the building and the upgrade of the HVAC system. And my initial thought was, oh, is that something that the commissioning action item group should be looking at? But then I thought, well, maybe not really, because commissioning is after something is in place. But is there any role for the EAC, the green team, anybody to sort of weigh in on how to approach the new HVAC system at the library?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that's exactly the role of the green team, as I see it. This one of our action items, not just recommissioning, but recommissioning would be, like you said, bringing a system back to its originally it's the way it was originally intended to operate. But in this one, I guess would be more like building efficiency in general. So they have some decisions to make. Is it the right time to invest in a geothermal system? Is that a feasible? What's the payback period on that? Is it better to go with a natural gas system or some other kind of heat recovery system, or renewable energy on the roof? So there's a lot of things that need to be researched, and the green team is definitely that's right up their alley, right? That's kind of right why we were forming them. And the person who has to make that decision sometimes might feel pressure, a little bit of pressure to keep budget under control or whatnot, and they can use the green team as a crutch or a shoulder to lean on in a time when it's tough, when you have to make tough decisions about do we spend more now to save later, kind of thing.
And should we in our role as sort of liaison, should we maybe ping Melissa and just mention this issue and say we think this is appropriate for the green team to look at, or is there additional actual recommendations or work we should do along with that? I don't know. I would think at least we should see if it's already on her radar screen, and if so, what's going on? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think it makes sense.
Things to do with the library are somewhat complicated by the fact that it doesn't belong to the township.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
So
It is
it's not
independent.
directly under the Green Team, and there's not necessarily any township involvement, but so maybe touch base with Melissa, but then maybe someone needs to reach out to the librarian or the head of the Board of Trustees of the library
Right.
and find out if we could help them.
That's a
Right.
good point, yeah.
I
I'm
think
sorry,
that's a good
I
point.
forgot about that.
But I do think, I mean, there is funding that comes from the township, so I think, and obviously, from the commissioners, right. So I do think that there's a legitimate issue for us to at least, weigh in on. If, they, as you're pointing out, they may be independent, they may not have any, we may not have the ability to, force anybody to do anything, but it would be more in the spirit of, hey, have you considered these approaches, and have you considered the environmental options that you may, have? So, and they may have their own, green committee or something like that we could link with, but I think
And
it'd
we've
be
always,
worth-
we've always recommended partnerships between the township and entities like that.
Right.
When it comes time to applying for grants or
Right.
that kind of stuff, we're always happy to lend our weight behind something
That's right.
if it helps. Especially, like you said, because we fund it partially. Under the sustainability work group, I think I have some old text there on our agenda about the stormwater ordinance. I don't think there's anything else to report on that, except for the
Bills
fact that
went out.
I got my bill. Yeah.
The bright
Yeah.
pink bill that, was,
Is there any other
I had one-
sustainability?
I had one economic question about that, and I don't know if anyone here knows the answer, but is that a tax or is that a fee for purposes of, is it like a real estate tax for tax
It was done,
deductions?
I thought it was done as a fee.
I
Yeah,
think it's
I
done
believe
as
so
a
as well.
fee.
That was one of the points of
Right,
controversy.
I think one of the reasons is that they were hoping or are planning to include all users of the system, including tax exempt entities, so that, everybody who's benefiting from the system will be paying into it, and so that's why it's fashioned as a fee, not a tax. And I think it may have,
There's a tax consequence, that's all.
there is a tax
And-
consequence,
and
so.
I don't know if it's deductible or not.
Right.
That's
I
the-
don't think it is. I think it's considered a user fee, but I'm not a tax expert, so I wouldn't.
Well,
I wouldn't.
if the township could put a lien on your property if you didn't pay it, then it arguably is closer to a tax.
Well, it's certainly a debt owed to the township, but I don't.
I'll ask
Yeah,
our
I think
lawyer
it's a
at
good question
planning.
for an accountant, but
lawyer.
I think the whole idea is it's meant to be fashioned such that it covers everybody, and it's in the nature of a user fee, but one that if, since you've used it, like, and you owe your small portion of it, if you don't pay, they have some enforcement authority and can put a lien on property, but hopefully that won't happen.
If I get the answer, I'll report next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, moving along to the open space. So, and the open space and Audubon, Radnor, Birdtown, both of those are yours. So can you give us any updates?
About the greenways and open space. In addition to the survey, which they hope people will take, they're also holding a series of meetings. So there are going to be 4 public meetings. The first public meeting was actually held on January 15th. And the next public meeting will be April 14th, followed by one on June 3rd, and then the last public meeting will be September 9th. So by that time, there should be a good draft plan to look at. The first meeting, I wasn't able to attend, but it was planned as more of a brainstorming meeting to have members of the township public come and talk about what they would be looking for in this type of plan. In addition, they're going to be holding meetings, 3 meetings for specific focus groups. So let me just mention that. Emails will go out to identified members of the various focus groups, but if you know of someone in one of the focus groups, or if you are identified with one of the focus groups and you don't receive the email, I think you should go ahead and plan on bidding in anyway. So the first focus group meeting is for conservancies, trusts, and homeowners associations. That's going to be held on February 5th from 8 to 9:30 in the Township building. So these are all going to be breakfast meetings, 8 in the morning to 9:30 in the morning. So that's the first one. The second one is for schools and other institutions in the Township, so churches and various organizations like that, fire departments. That's going to be held February 26th, again, at the Township building from 8 to 9:30. And the third focus group meeting will be for businesses and office parks, and that will be held as a breakfast meeting on the morning of March 5th. So if any of those relates to you, then make sure you come. We want to get as much feedback as we can to feed into this. I think it's a great opportunity to think about how we can connect with the developing regional network of trails that's spreading through the area.
You know, Anna, it strikes me that we ought to include everybody on the EAC on the email blasts that go out in terms of just being able to help and contribute ideas and suggest people for particular groups. It's one more resource.
Okay, I think, I suspect the email blasts have already gone out, but I will email the EAC the letter that went out to everybody. I'll make sure I send that around.
Yeah, that would be terrific to be able to sort of at least hear what's going on and you know, if there's something that we can be helpful with, I'm sure we would very much like to. I just note that I would be thrilled if the trail system could be integrated more and biking trails could be linked together, as I'm sure we all are. I will also note that I was interested. I was just looking for different bike routes, and I noticed that Haverford Township has created a bike map. Maybe you know this, but they have created a bike map that includes actual trails, which they have quite a few of, some of which I didn't even know about. But they also have designated roads as essentially kind of informal biking roads. And I guess somebody has gone out and said, you know, if you are biking, this is not, you know, maybe it's not a trail, but it's a road that's good to bike on. And I thought, well, that's a great intermediate step before you have a whole true network. At least you can map out, you know, roads that are at least better than other roads. And, you know, Radnor could probably do something like that long before it officially has a true trail system. Maybe that's something that's already being considered, but
Well, I think that the consultant is looking at all of these things, and certainly it's a very incremental process to build out your trail system, and a lot of the trails that we hope to connect to are far from being built. So we were looking at various trails. We were looking at what they had in Haverford Township, and a number of things that are designated as bike trails are actually sidewalks.
right.
So it varies a lot
Right.
from area to area, but looking at safe connections along the roads
Right.
is certainly something that will be part of the process.
Good. Right.
We might want to mention in a very preliminary way that there's a lot more to it than just the trails. There's discussions about how updating the open space plan for the township, finding parcels that perhaps could or should be acquired to make those connections work better, doing a map of, in some townships, they will designate privately held parcels as targets for open space acquisition, and then if you are, quote, a target and you're about to sell your property, the township has 12 months to negotiate with you and try to buy it, things like that.
One of the things that we've been discussing that relates to Skip's comments is the notion of an official map. Radnor does not have an official map, but that's how you designate properties as priority properties for the township. So I think we all hope that one of the things that will come out of this process is an official map for the township.
And also, I would hope that there'd be some effort to work perhaps with SEPTA or the other large landowners that have natural potential links. So this may be already in the
Yes,
process.
absolutely. I mean, the consultant has worked with the various organizations, the various state entities and private entities around, and they have a good working relationship and know kind of the steps to take. So one of the things we'll be looking at are whether there are potential corridors that we could piggyback off rights of way.
Some of the discussion is that, you can get a trail easement. You don't have to own the property either to be able to create the trail.
Can you speak to whether or not any other organizations, maybe less formal organizations, might be invited to contribute their ideas into this process? Something like bicycling clubs, or walking or hiking clubs, or dog park clubs, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, they're the public meetings. So I think that they've identified the focus groups that would have property or have particular property interests that they need to work with in this process. But in addition, they're having the 4 public meetings, and those would certainly be the times for members of other less formal groups, groups that aren't included in the focus
but
sessions.
the email blast, just describing this process and inviting everybody, went out to who? Who'd that go out to?
Well, the emails, what they asked us to do, and I don't think they've done an email blast to the public. Nobody received an email about this, did they? Yeah, there was talk of that, and I think it may have fallen through the cracks, because I think that the township does have a database that it can send out an email to people, and probably should. The focus group emails, the committee has made an effort to identify all the entities that would fall in each of these focus groups, and emails have gone out to those groups.
All would be a strong term, I'm sure. I mean,
Right. Well, an effort.
A lot, yeah. Yeah, I'm just wondering. I mean, I guess this survey on the website is probably important to get that out, right?
I think that's an important way to express your preferences
Yeah.
and express your way, have feedback to the process on how you're using the parks.
Great.
Yeah.
But to Josh's point, again, you probably already know this, but there are some, particularly the bike clubs, that are very, very focused on this. I think it's Philadelphia Bicycle Coalition that has a whole plan for regional bike trails, and including Radnor. So, you may already be linked with them, but I think that's probably there may be some members in the township who would be well down the path, so to speak, in terms of knowing what's going on and having ideas about what would work. So,
Well,
if it's not,
Skip and I can certainly raise that with the
Yeah.
consultant. It's the consultant's plan that pulls this together. They've done this in a number of other municipalities, so they know what they're doing, but we'll definitely ask them what their mechanism is for including that kind of feedback.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Birdtown. There are actually 2 things that I want to mention related to the Radnor Birdtown effort. The first is the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is one of the big annual Audubon events, and it was sort of the kickoff event for Birdtown last year. So on February 1st at 10 at the library, there'll be a presentation on how to participate in the Great Backyard Bird Count. Steve Safier from Audubon is coming, and he'll talk about how you can record the data and talk about how to identify some of the birds that are commonly going to be seen in our backyard. The count itself takes place over President's Day weekend, so from February 14th through the 17th. And I did it last year, you can record it on the computer through the Cornell Ornithology website, I think, but all that information will be available at the presentation on the 1st, and if you don't get it there, then you can go to the Audubon site and get the information as well. And one of the Birdtown goals is to have Radnor have a really strong showing, have us become a premier bird count town. So we're looking for that.
do the results of those counts, do they get posted? And
They do.
Can we
Yes, they
share?
get
I think it'd be
crunched and
fascinating.
posted, yes. So it's-
Maybe after the February one, we can actually hear what the results are. I think that would be really fun to hear.
and it's a good opportunity to work as a family. If you have children, part of the goals of doing it over President's Day weekend was the idea that there would be a lot of children available and a chance to educate them on what birds are actually in the yard and how to identify them, how to count them. So it's very easy. Anyway, okay. The other Bird Town related project is the effort to get an improved habitat in parts of the area around the Township building. So I met again with Paul Basic from the Township, and they seem to be receptive to going ahead with some of the projects. There are a couple projects, because the building is strategically located so close to the creek and on the hillside, almost anything you do to improve the habitat for birds around here is also going to have stormwater benefits. So I'm looking for some volunteers from Birdtown and from the EAC to put our heads together and apply for a Wren grant to try to kick off some of the work around the Township building. So that's my report.
Great, thanks. I was going to mention what you said earlier, Ann, and that Dan Meyer's our resident expert on that, right? So, Wren, yes, on Wren grants. So maybe the second time's a charm. This will be our second, right? This will be our second one, or not our, but yeah, we know what we're doing now. The last work group report would be the Goose group. This will be the last report from the Goose group. We can disband it then. I'm the only member present, so I'll give you the update. We presented to the Board of Commissioners our report, our study, our investigation into Canada geese overpopulation and its environmental effects and solutions, possible solutions that we could get behind as the EAC. So we gave that to the Board of Commissioners on the 16th of December. I laid out various approaches that we could use at the Willows, including habitat modification, harassment of the geese, egg addling, prohibition on feeding. We also spoke about the sports fields, about the problems that they were seeing there, and one of the ideas we have was to either slowly or all at once, I guess, start to change the type of turf grasses that we use. There are types of grasses that geese don't like to eat, apparently, and some of the Township employees were aware of this product. It's been used at airports in the past, and so they're looking into that, and we offered our help going forward if they wanted some assistance in doing research on specific things. But basically what we recommended is that this is a complex issue with not just one solution, and that experts in the field would need to be or should be hired to come up with a detailed plan on how to implement, as we're not experts in it. We just sort of laid out some ideas. We did specifically mention a few things that we would not approve of, and one of those was the bringing in an invasive species like a swan to chase them away and whatnot. So we laid out a few things that we just couldn't get behind as the EAC. But for the most part, it was a positive discussion between the BOC and us, and it was well received, I would say, in general. Great. Moving along to the community environmental education and awareness. Usually I'm the only one that has anything to say about that, but I'll just give you a heads up that it's been slow over the holiday period in terms of the green group that we have at West Wayne Elementary School, the PTO group that I volunteer on. But we hope to, as we start heading towards Earth Day here, we tend to feel the urgency a little bit, and we start to ramp up our projects. And Matt, you and I were part of one last year, right there. We were doing some mulching and some cleanups of the bird gardens over there. So hopefully you'll have something to report next month. On to the liaison reports. Skip? What do you have?
We are busier than ever, if that's possible. We had a daytime meeting the day before Thanksgiving. We had a daytime meeting about a week ago because we just can't fit it into the regularly scheduled evening meetings. And there's a lot of demand occasionally for evening time. The most interesting thing that's come up lately is the must ordinance, mixed use, sustainable transit. It's also, I call it, the shorthand is the biomed ordinance. It involves 3 large parcels next to the Blue Route. And the biomed parcel itself is about 26 acres. And they want to redevelop that. I think some people would call it the old Smith Klein property. Some interesting things, though, from an EAC standpoint that are appearing in the ordinance. There are, to get to have it be developed for mixed use as opposed to pure office or office and laboratory, we've developed in the ordinance, especially with tremendous work by staff on this, about 15 things that they can do. If they do all 16, they get the maximum possible, and this is not final yet at this point, but they get the maximum possible increased density. It's not major increases. It's not going like from 1 to 3 times what they could have built, but it's going from like a 50% number to up to an 80% number. And again, it's a moving target. I can't tell you exactly what we're going to end up with, but things like requiring the developer to provide for zip car location to reduce traffic, requiring the developer to build less parking than is mandated under our other ordinances, so that the proximity to the heavy rail and light rail will increase that use. Connections between the rails, creating a walking path. LED certification for some portion of the buildings is going to be a requirement, or it'll be a thing that you have to do to get your enhanced density.
LEED
Yeah,
certification.
sorry. I think silver, for what it's worth. What was I going to say here? So a variety of components that you might not have seen in ordinances until recently, but they are finally being put in. And I'm looking forward to seeing how many of the different optional things the developer chooses to do in this particular case. I'm sure that we're going to get a mixed use, which one of the issues is to reduce traffic. So 40% of the property might be residential apartments. Another portion of it would be a hotel. The zoning right now doesn't automatically permit that, but this would be a by right use if they qualify for, meeting the criteria of the ordinance. So I recommend you take a look at it online and/or watch the next meeting.
So the draft is available for review online, or is it a final version? I'm sorry.
It's not a final version.
It's a mixed-use special transportation? No. Sustainable transportation?
Yeah.
What is the rail line that is right there?
The light rail, the high-speed line. It abuts property, actually.
It used to be called the 100.
Yeah, some people would call them the P&W way back, too. And the heavy rail's not that far away either. But, there's a shuttle component and different things you can do to qualify for the added density, so you'd have to set up and maintain a shuttle to go to and from the train stations. You may see in Wayne, I don't know how many of you are near the Wayne train station, there's 2 shuttles there most days that are running back and forth to King of Prussia, that the business improvement district that I'm involved with in King of Prussia has funded and set up. We also got a $500,000 grant from the state. That's a declining grant, so we got $250 the first year, then $125, then whatever, until we run out. But the theory is that after 3 years, you hopefully get it established.
That's right.
It would take up another 20 minutes of the meeting, and I didn't bring the material. I just wanted to give you a flavor for it. But there's things like using pre-tax dollars to buy train tickets or a monthly pass, which you can do. It's a lawful and legal thing. And bike racks. All sorts of things that are in this ordinance that
Charging
have
stations.
not typically in our ordinance.
Charging, did you say?
Oh, and charging stations too. Yeah, I think
that's
1
right.
per 1,000.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. This sounds like a very
Wow.
innovative.
Right up our alley, huh?
Yeah, terrific draft, and it sounds like it's really is it going to be, these are the requirements, or are these things where if you do these things, you get to build a bigger building or get?
Some there are actual requirements. I think the zip car thing is an actual requirement.
Great.
I think the charging station thing may be an actual requirement. The idea of a trail or a path between the two stations or facilitating better connectivity is probably an optional thing. There are 16 options right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it sounds fantastic. Please let us know if there's anything you need to help. And I would just say on the charging stations, I think that's particularly terrific to see in a multifamily or an apartment setting where somebody wouldn't otherwise be able to have an electric car very efficiently. So to have, a quasi-public charging station in that setting is super important, and sounds like this ordinance is going in a great direction.
There are some quirky things, like the apartment thing is supposed to be 65% single bedroom, so that we don't have a negative impact on the school district.
Interesting. Negative being kids.
Yes, basically. Well,
Pesky
because
kids.
the revenue stream from a single-bedroom apartment is probably
Is
not
positive.
adequate to,
Yeah.
or even a three-bedroom apartment is probably not adequate to educate, 2.1 children from
Right.
that.
Right. That's terrific.
So, I mean, there's some pragmatic things. I mean, the traffic, there's a huge component on traffic. Signalization changes, intersection improvements, there's elaborate traffic studies involved. It's probably more complicated than the Villanova ordinance, and that was not a walk in the park.
Right.
There is some of a tug of war between actually the largest office property owner in the township, which is Brandywine, and the applicant, because the concern is that there will be tremendous traffic impact. And I don't want to get into it, but all these meetings are on YouTube, and
Yeah.
maybe the last meeting would be the one to look at.
Any update on the Villanova plan?
Our set of recommendations was largely considered and mainly favorably acted upon by the commissioners, but not as to setbacks. So these tall 5-story buildings are still supposedly going to be 35 feet off the right-of-way on that side of Lancaster. And personally, I'm opposed to that, but, we're advisory and they have the power to decide. And the powers that be, I think, like the 35 feet.
I think. Okay.
Well, that's great. I think maybe what I can do is I'm gonna read that must from start to finish if I can, and maybe I can boil.
If you can't find it.
Okay.
Send me an email.
I'd like to maybe take a quick look at those.
I'll send one of the versions, and the most recent version, I'll just send it to everybody on the EAC.
Oh, that'd be great.
Great.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to need your email.
And what I'll do is I'll just if somebody else doesn't have quite as much time, I'll send you like maybe a section or two to pay particular attention to, because I think it's
Skip,
great.
just a quick question. Is that whole biomed property, is that currently developed, partly developed, undeveloped?
Well, stop me when I go too far on time. Currently, it has about 375,000 square feet. One of the buildings is largely vacant because it's laboratory, and curiously, you would think that would be a wonderful thing, but actually, laboratory space is hard to rent in a high-rent district like this, and I guess it's maybe some of the laboratory work is being done now in other countries or whatever, but so they're using some of the space for storage. And in terms of traffic impacts, the current site probably generates 100 to 120 trips at peak hour in the morning and peak hour in the afternoon, with people coming and going. Fully developed under their by right scenario, it would jump to about 600 at each hour. And 25 or 30% of that goes down King of Prussia Road under the R5 and through that 2-lane little bridge, and the other 75% gets on the Blue Route. The must proposal is still probably, depending on how it finally shakes out, somewhere between 700 and 850,000 square feet, but 60% of it at least will be something like retail in support of the development, the apartments, the hotel, and office as a component will be capped at, I think, and that's in a perfect world where everything works out and all the setbacks are just right, like 400,000 square feet. So a little bigger than what they have now, but instead of being a lot bigger than what they have now, the other uses should reduce the traffic impact, at least at peak hours.
Is there anything that could dramatically impact the traffic that the owner could do, or is it pretty much, given that location, given its neighbors, I mean, it's across from the school.
Yeah.
Is there anything?
To talk about extra lanes of road between the site and the Blue Route, that would probably help in that direction.
Okay.
The only thing, and the neighbors don't really want necessarily the King of Prussia Road or Radnor Chester Road to be widened, because then the traffic just keeps zooming along. The only practical thing you could possibly do is widen the lanes under the 1898 railroad bridge, and you'd have to do something to keep it from going down King of Prussia Road. Well, I don't know what that could be, but you'd rather direct that to Matson Ford Road maybe. But nobody on that side of Lancaster wants this in that sense. But by the same token, you have to respect property rights, that they do have a right to develop the property. We're trying to guide it in a way that is still a fair and good yield for them, but doesn't have the same traffic impact as pure office.
I see.
What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, that sort of got to what I was wondering is there the ability by the township to say, we can accept X additional traffic, units, and not more, and so please, work within that constraint. You mentioned the as of right, and I know that's, crucially important, but is there the ability?
Well, that's disputed too. All the different players are
right.
Don't agree about what's by right.
But if I don't want, I know you've spent endless hours on
by
this
right is
stuff,
actually a lot more. Under one scenario with like a near perfect luck in terms of everything, setbacks, and it's something like 1 million square feet.
So, but I guess what I'm asking is, does this process include some sort of statement or assessment by the township that says, our traffic engineer has looked at this intersection, this location, and says, it could accept, X hundreds more cars without causing massive problems? Or is it not?
No. There are things in there about improving intersections or not laying an intersection. If you have an intersection that's an A, B, or a C, it can't degrade below a C, which may seem counterintuitive to say, why would you let a B intersection or an A? You know the expression A, B, and C? It's amount of use of the intersection, and the failing intersections are Fs,
Okay.
and bad intersections are Ds.
So would any of the major intersections
Yes,
under this
they
under this
would
plan?
get worse. They almost no matter what. If they build what they can build under PLO, they'll get worse. If they build what maybe they ultimately can build under MUST, they'll get worse. They may get less worse under the MUST.
Is there, and I guess, is there any way to say you can't degrade our intersections below C or something like that, or is that outside the power?
You have to take measures to try to prevent that. And this is not a PennDOT road, that road right there, King of Prussia Road. Not like Lancaster, where the state uses those criteria that we were just talking about. Like, you can't let a C get worse than a C. And sometimes it's cameras that see how many cars are coming from this direction and how many cars are coming from this direction, and it changes the time of the light to adjust for real-time conditions.
Okay.
Sometimes it's additional lanes, sometimes it's slip ramps, but the topography doesn't work right to put a slip ramp right onto the Blue Route, which, like another entrance ramp, that would be terrific. That would at least stop half of it. But apparently the elevations don't work for that.
Okay.
It's not fair when we all volunteer for me to say the best way I could explain this is to have you watch the YouTube video, but
Yeah.
the best way.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thank you. That's
I was
fair.
going to suggest just that, as before we spend too much
time and solve all of your problems, because we're capable of doing that.
Come on down.
Let's everybody take a look at the, if not the meeting, at least the must. Yeah, thanks. Let's move along to Luke, Parks and Rec. What's happening?
Sure. Coming up this weekend, we have Mystery Dinner Theater at the Willows Park, which should be exciting. I'm going to go with my wife, and it'll be my first one, so we'll see how it goes. There's the Daddy-Daughter Dance, which is at the Radnor Hotel, so that doesn't really concern any parks. But with regard to the actual Parks and Rec Board, there was an informal meeting in the beginning of this month. There was no quorum, but the board sat down with Commissioners Nagel and Schaefer and I believe Tammy Cohen as well, where they discussed certain things like cell tower placement in the parks, and this was laying out an agenda. No substantive decisions were made, but cell tower placement, what exactly is going to happen with the Willows. Conroy Catering is going to be briefing the board on it next month, as far as I know. Changes to Enki Park, Capelli Park, renovating Clem McCrone Park, changes to Veterans Park, getting into trails, greenway, and open space plans, particularly for Adrossan, which I know Ann was touching on. An organic park policy, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I'm going to hope to have some details. And again, the Ardrossan planning for a trail going through there. So as I have more details, of course, I'll report them. What we're also going to do is take the approximately 28, 30 parks that we have in the township and divvy them up amongst the 5 board members right now, assuming we don't get anybody else, just so we have someone responsible for what exactly we're doing with these, whether it's cell phone towers or whatever it may be, fixing them up, as I'll touch on from Sloan, so that we're not talking about them, but someone's actually going and looking and reporting back as to what's going on with these parks. In that vein, Sloan did reach out to me about Fenimore Woods. And I know there are issues with the actual pond and the bridge in terms of access to different parts of the park for bikers and joggers and things like that. So I have not been to the park since last spring probably, so I'm personally going to go and check it out, and maybe we can go together.
That would be
but
great.
in terms of divvying up these parks, I'm of course going to volunteer for Fenimore Woods, and we can check out the problem with the pond that Sloan touched on and
That would be
the
great.
issues with access, so that we can address these and see what we can do in conjunction with Tammy and with Steve, right? You've spoken with them about it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Josh, is it okay if I mention this? So the issue that I think would be great for the EAC to work with Parks and Rec on would be the condition of Fenimore Woods Pond. This is the pond that's down by Eastern College. It's a great pond, really popular for ice skating in the winter, hockey. In the summer, it's great until sort of later in the season when it gets covered with a really thick algae cover, which is aesthetically a problem. I'm sure it's not great for a lot of the vegetation and of course for fish. And I think some of the kids, if it were cleaner, perhaps it could be stocked with fish, be great for fishing. I'd note that I walked around it recently. There's a sign near the pond, you may know this, which says that there are reed beds that are near the pond. And there's a sign over it that says, the Board of Commissioners, in conjunction with the EAC and the Parks and Rec Committee, put these reed beds in order to try to help clean up the pond. And this was done, I think, 5 to 10 years ago.
Further back.
Or maybe even further back. I did speak with Steve Norsini. He says, to his knowledge, the pond has never really been very clean at the end of the season, particularly. So he seems open to exploring ways to try to clean it up. He has experience doing this in a previous town. So I'd love to work with anybody else on the EAC. Luke, you with Parks and Rec to
Sure.
explore what can be done to clean it up. A quick research suggests things like There are some aerating machines that move the water around. I think they're used at the willows and at other ponds. That apparently discourages algae. Perhaps there's something going on with the reed beds that could be improved and make them more effective. There may be some other techniques. So love to work with you on that, and anybody else who has an interest. So well, why don't we form a little subgroup to look into that.
Yeah, as I said at our next, I already forwarded the email,
Oh,
which you
great.
saw, just to get it going. We have a pretty good email chain on Parks and Rec, like we have here too.
That's
So
great.
we'll see what comes back about that, and
Excellent.
yeah, we'll certainly, you and I can definitely run with the ball there and see what we can do with
Great. Thank you.
Tammy and Steve. So yeah, something we'll get into and will be added to our agenda here for this year for all these different parks.
Great. Thank you.
So that's pretty much that's kind of a summary of what we're doing. Next month, hopefully, they're going to make changes we're going to discuss changes to the Enke Park tot lot. Cell tower placement, we're going to discuss that, and we're going to get a briefing on the Willows proposal from Conroy. So hopefully at the next meeting, I'll have a little more detail on those three things at least. Again, the organic park policy is something I saw that's interesting, and I'm going to try to get some details on that too. And the Ardrossan Trail is very interesting for me. So I'm going to see what more I can get for the next meeting to fill everybody in.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned a lot of things there, but it
Yeah.
sort of sounds like you were just kind of, the early stages of the year, you're setting the agenda for the year for discussions at different future meetings.
Yeah, our goal this year was really to lay out exactly what we're trying to hit here, and what we're trying to get done. So, yeah, there were a lot of things. I really just mentioned what pertained to the parks, and anything environmentally related. Specifically for next month, those things are things we're going to be looking into. So, we're taking it month by month, of course, but those are specifically the things I'm hoping to have some more
And
detail on for the next meeting.
Oh, that's great. And I wonder if organic parks, maybe that dovetails with, Josh, you've spoken with them
Sure,
about
yeah.
sustainable park
Yeah,
policies.
it was middle of 2013, I got to go to the Willows for their,
Right.
for one of their meetings
For the-
and talk to them about
Right.
one of our greenhouse gas action plans, which was
Right.
I think
Mowing,
we called it a
reduce-
sustainable parks policy.
Right.
But maybe
Right.
maybe that might be part of this organic
Right.
thing. But
Right.
we'll let Luke do a little bit
That'd
of
be great.
background on that and come back and let us know what that's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks.
And
Luke.
that's about all I have with regard to Parks and Rec.
You going to daddy-daughter dance?
My daughter's 4 months old, so not yet. Not yet. A few years maybe. Yeah, I'd have to take the lead on that one, right?
Well, that sounds great. Okay, we'll move into old business. Does anybody have old business?
Maybe I should mention the tree tenders.
I think it's a good time to do
Okay.
that, yeah.
I'll hand these along. I sent this to the group, but following on the presentation that John Sheehan gave last time about the challenge of losing tree canopy in Radnor, I did a little survey of what I could see in surrounding towns and what they're doing. So I looked at a couple of towns nearby, including Lower Merion, and Haverford Township and Tredyffrin Township, found that several of the towns had groups that were active in planting new trees, replacing the shade trees. For example, Haverford Township seems very active under the leadership of Jean Angel, who is both the chair of their Shade Tree Commission and the head of this tree tenders group in Haverford. And she, in that role, she's basically put together a group of volunteers in Haverford that, it's a tree tender group. This is a name used by many groups throughout the state and maybe even beyond. They are, as I mentioned, trained by the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, and they are funded in part by PHS and in part by the state through a tree vitalizers program that the state funds through the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. The Tree Vitalizer program has a goal of planting 1 million trees, and as of last fall, they've planted or helped plant 371,000 trees. So it seems like a pretty active and effective program. So the local effort is done by these tree tender groups in Haverford. Jean said that in Haverford they've worked in parks, basically picking different parks and figuring out where trees would work well, and then work with their public works department to dig the holes for the trees. The tree tender training is very important, because many of the public works department people are not experts in where the proper placement would be. So the tree tenders come and help figure out where the best places within the parks would be, along streets, schools, and as I mentioned, she's also developed a program for private residences where she and the town are giving currently up to 50 free trees to residents in Haverford who plant them on their property, and with the help of the tree tender group, get it planted. The township digs the hole. The tree tenders come and help figure out where would be a good place for this particular type of tree, and talk a little bit about the maintenance of the tree with the homeowner. So sounds like a very good effort. There's a similar effort in Tredyffrin, and there's a nice little note on their website about last September, they had 75 volunteers that planted 166 trees and 50 shrubs, and they have a similar tree tender group. So I think this is a great kind of effort. I spoke with a woman who runs the group, the tree tender group at PHS, Barley Van Cleef, who was very nice and gave a lot of information about the training, which starts this Saturday, and also just general advice in terms of getting a tree tender effort going. I think things that make sense would be, we encourage, and maybe some of us could sign up for the tree tender training. Jean Angel from Haverford thought, you really want to have kind of 8 to 10 tree tenders in a township to be able to help be present at various plantings throughout the season. If you only have 2 or 3, which is PHS requires that there be 2 or 3 volunteers from a township to have an official tree tender group. Jean's feeling is that's a little bit too few to have an effective group, because you want to have some folks who can, handle the plantings throughout the year. Jean organizes, it sounded like about 4 different planting days across the year. So
Are these township employees that you're suggesting become tree tenders, or just residents?
Well, actually, there's a mix. In Haverford, for example, it's largely residents who are the trained tree tenders and the volunteers. But Jean believed that at least 1 or 2 of the Public Works Department employees had been trained.
Do you know if there's any
I
people
don't
trained
know.
in Radnor?
Actually, I did ask Barley at PHS if there were any trained tree tenders in Radnor. She said that there are a few. She didn't provide names, but she said that there isn't an official tree tender group. There have been a few folks who've been gone through the training. So we're not starting from 0, but it sounds like it's not a,
But we don't. There's no reason for us to believe that there's anybody trained as an employee of the township is trained, right?
that I didn't ask that specific question, but so I don't.
We don't know.
I don't know. But certainly there's there's no reason, in fact, I think it would be great if, along with some residents, a member or two of the township staff would attend a training as well. So I'll depending on which way we go, I think that would make a great deal of sense to maybe recommend, perhaps to the green team, as follow-ups. I also think, it makes sense at some point sooner than later to link with the Shade Tree Commission, and work with them and find out, what efforts they are supportive of. So.
We used to have a different relationship with the Shade Tree Commission. We used to be a little bit closer. I think where there was a liaison at one point
Yeah.
before my time. I believe there was a liaison, but as we've talked about in the past, the Shade Tree Commission has become more of a regulatory, not regulatory, but the
Approval of plans.
and less of a a cheerleader for
Yeah.
shade trees, which some people think that's what they are, but that's not how they act right now in Radnor.
Can I suggest one thing to keep an eye on in all this that I think is mentioned in some of the literature but maybe downplayed, and that is educating people on the importance of planting native trees.
Yeah.
And I think that gets overlooked, how many non-native trees we planted and how critical it is to bird habitat to have the trees and shrubs that match up with the birds, because the trees and the shrubs that match up with the native birds give them the food they need when they need it. And if you plant a non-native, then chances are its cycle is not in sync with the birds, so they don't have the berries when the right birds are migrating. And that's actually become a huge issue for birds. So since Radnor is now a bird town, I think that should be a big part of our effort, is making
Yeah.
sure that we get the right trees planted as well.
I talked a little bit with Jean Angel from Haverford about that point, and she said, interestingly, PHS does not only supply native species. However, they do supply, among the trees that they do supply some that are native. She said that she's been able to plant in Haverford several dozens, if not hundreds, of maples and oaks, various types of oaks, and other native species. So, I think her feeling is, if that's a priority, which it should be, you can work with PHS and work toward perhaps overweighting or selecting the ones that are native in their offerings. She did say, you work with PHS. They're the supplier, so you kind of have to figure out what you want on their list, and not all of them are native, but many of them are.
So there's obviously this overlap of interest with the Audubon bird town, but another overlap of interest, it seems to me, would be with the whole stormwater management issue, and now
Yes.
there's a fee. So I guess what exactly is the purpose of this whole matter with the Tree Vitalize, and how, as the EAC, exactly are we looking to do with it in terms of other interests?
It's a very good question. I mean, we were presented by John Sheehan with this issue. I think it's a very interesting issue. I think it is something that it would be great if we saw a tree tender group come together, and perhaps we could help motivate and participate in that. I think it is, something that could absolutely be part of the stormwater initiative by the township, in the sense that, some of the benefits of these tree plantings is to create better buffers and stormwater control systems. And so certainly I could see a justification for perhaps some funding coming to this type of effort from the township and funded by that fee. This is a very small, Haverford, even though they're giving away, trees, spending a very small number, a very small amount on it, a few $1,000s, which will be a fairly small part of the stormwater effort. So I could see it being very realistic to suggest to the township that a part of the stormwater fee might well go to, helping people defray the cost or completely cover the cost of planting trees on their own property, and in addition, helping to fund the purchase of trees for the township. These are not free trees, although they're subsidized. They are $50 or so a tree. So it is, there is some expense to the township for participating, but it's, a very small number compared to the kinds of numbers that they're contemplating for, the stormwater utility as a whole. So I think it's a good point, and I don't know exactly how we move forward.
I was just going to ask, or I was going to suggest something. It seems like there's a lot to digest here, even though it's very nicely presented. Thank you very much, Sloan. This is great.
Okay.
I am going to suggest that we all take a look at this and think how this can fit into our, first of all, our greenhouse gas action plan item, which was to have some tree planting occur in the
Right.
township, but we never really decided how that was
How?
going to happen. And just as a shade tree issue, a quality of
Right.
life issue, or whether it's a stormwater issue. So just give it some thought over the next month, and maybe we can have some email discussion about whether this can become part of our, whether it's a subgroup or whatever. And then at our next meeting, we can, maybe we might be able to lay out a way forward, because right now we just seem to, we're spinning our wheels a little bit here, just, with all this information we have.
Yeah, it's a little overwhelming, but I think that'd be great, we brainstorm and figure out what we think makes sense. In the meantime, if anybody is motivated to get up early on Saturday and go to the training, that would be great. Certainly, there are other opportunities to get the training. And I think in the meantime also, Josh, maybe consider when and how, an approach to the Shade Tree Commission makes sense. And maybe that's, further down the road, but I think that's something we should
Yeah.
put on the
I agree.
on the thinking.
Mhm. I agree. Thanks. Do we have any other old business? Do we have any new business? We did bring up our Fenimore Woods discussion, and
That's
that
right.
would be new business, but
That's
any
right.
other new business? And as there is no public comment, I don't think, no? We'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks.